Greetings to you, my dear friend. And I'm the creator of this channel. My name's Anthony. I write all the stories here myself. Yes, I'm not a professional writer or a professional narrator, but I'll try very hard. So I'll ask you to treat me with a little bit of leniency. And today's story that I'm going to tell you is about Tom, about how his life was completely destroyed after 30 years of marriage. His wife cheated on. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about how Tom rose from the ashes, how he rebuilt his own life and started living his best life, his very best life. The hero of this story serves as a great example for us, including for me, of how you shouldn't give up. You should never give up. No matter what kind of crap happens in life, you should always strive for the best and try to live your best life. As one of my favorite subscribers said, as they wrote, the best revenge is living your best life. So, friends, if you're ready, then let me begin.
All right, gentlemen. So, shall we get started? Diane was standing in the kitchen, her arms crossed, fingers digging into her elbows, holding herself together so she wouldn't change her mind. Tom, you're boring. You've always been so boring. I need a man who's fun, and I've already found him. So you have two options. You can stay and watch me have fun with this man. I'll finally be happy with him, with someone else. Or you can just get out of here. 30 years. Afterwards, I sat there counting. In a motel, by the highway, staring at the ceiling. Got married at 22. Megan, a couple years later. Dylan, a couple more after that. A house in the Dallas suburbs. A mortgage I paid off early. Mowed the lawn on Saturdays. Paid the bills on time. Booked vacations in advance, way in advance. Like a normal person, or so I thought. And now I'm boring. All right. I grabbed my jacket. My wallet was already in my pocket. It was always in my pocket. Diane didn't even move. I closed the door carefully, making sure not to slam it. 30 years. Closing the door quietly. Because the kids were sleeping. The kids have long since gone ud. But my hand still held a doorknob. The motel was called Lone Star Rest. It smelled so bad, the price didn't surprise me at all. The mattress was all over the place, springs poking everywhere. Someone was watching TV in the next room. Some Spanish language talk show. Women were yelling at each other. I lay there, just staring up at the ceiling. At a brown stain that, if you wanted, you could imagine looked like a map of Texas. Or maybe something else. And you know what the strangest thing was? I tried to remember the last time I actually made a decision myself. Any decision at all. Where to go for Christmas? Diane made that decision. Which couch to buy? Again, Diane. Wall color? Once again, Diane. Where to eat for our anniversary? Diane. Shirts? She picked those out too. Blue ones. She thought they looked good on me. That's what she believed. Not a single decision. In 30 years, I haven't made a single decision. In the morning, I found an apartment. A one-bedroom. Way out on the eastern edge of Dallas. Not the kind of neighborhood you'd want to walk around at night. The wallpaper was yellow. Someone had made that choice once, and apparently regretted it. But never bothered to repaint. The kitchen. A little nook with a rusty faucet and a window facing the dumpster. Rent, but at least it's affordable rent. A bookkeeper at a logistics company isn't exactly living large, but I can afford yellow wallpaper. Bought a mattress at Walmart. Cheap, rolled up. You have to unroll it and wait for it to puff up. A microwave, a pack of pasta, Kraft in the blue box, a mug, just one mug. I sat down on the floor. The mattress still hadn't fully expanded. One corner was sticking up. The pasta was getting cold in a plastic bowl. Outside the window, someone was leaning on their horn. Long and angry. I was 52 years old. Damn, 52 years old, and I left my parents' house straight for Diane. And Diane, And now, Diane, here I am. At 52, for the first time in my life, I was sitting alone and had no idea who I even was, who I really was. The pasta was too salty, but I ate it anyway before work. I walked, but it took about 40 minutes to get there. I used to drive, but the car stayed with Diane. Technically, we bought it together, but I didn't argue. I never argue about anything, really. The lawyer said, "Tom, you're giving her too much." I nodded. "Oh, listen, Tom, your wife was really lucky to have such an easygoing husband, but it looks like you weren't so lucky with your wife." I just nodded and signed the papers. The house went to her, the car went to her, half the savings went to her. Later, Megan said I acted like someone who just didn't care. Honestly, maybe that's exactly how it was. Maybe I just wanted it to be over as soon as possible. Like a trip to the dentist. Let it hurt, but let it be quick. No one at work even asked. I lost weight. A lot. In just a couple of months. Not on purpose. I didn't set out to lose weight. I just kept forgetting to eat. Or maybe I just didn't want to. I can't even remember now. Microwave pasta. 5th time this week. Again? At this point, it's not even sadness anymore. Just heartburn. My coworkers would glance at me, then look away. One day, Janet from HR silently put a donut on my desk. Chocolate wrapped in a napkin. And she didn't say a word. I ate it and almost choked. My throat tightened up. It just closed up on me. I had to sit there for a minute until it passed. Weird reaction. In the evening, the apartment felt like it was closing in on me. Yellow walls, low ceiling, a tiny window. I bought the TV at a thrift store and set it on the mattress box. I turned it on once. Some sitcom was playing, canned laughter, and I turned it off right away. I just sat there in silence. Megan called a week after I moved in. She's 27, lives in Austin, works in marketing. Her voice sounded tense. Dad, how are you? I'm fine, honey. Mom said you left? Yeah, that's right. Dad, really, I'm okay. She wanted to say something else. I heard her take a breath. She didn't say it, just said goodbye. I looked at the screen after we hung up. Just over 3 minutes. Dylan called every couple of weeks. 25, Seattle. Some kind of startup. I never really figured out what he does there. How are you, Dad? I'm good, son. All right then, and then just the dial tone. Those short man-to-man talks between father and son. One evening, I cracked open a beer. Then another and another. Sat on the mattress, stared at the yellow wall, and drank. Oh, who's slipping into an alcoholic depression here? Not too fast, not too slow, just steady. Like it's a habit. After the 4th bottle, I reached for a 5th. The fridge was empty. I stood in front of the open door, the light shining in my eyes. The shelves were white. White and empty. And I thought, tomorrow I'll buy another pack, a whole pack. It'll be easier. And right there, standing in front of that empty fridge, it hit me. My dad, not in real life, but I saw him clear as a photo. Dad in the garage in Abilene with a can of Budweiser. He was 54 when Mom left. He drank every evening. Then every day. Then he got fired. He died at 61. In that same garage, in that same chair. I closed the fridge, lay down, and stared at the ceiling. I didn't buy any more beer after that. Dad saved Tom from alcoholism by being a bad example. But Diane's voice didn't go away. Boring. That kept spinning in my head, somewhere inside, like a broken record. I celebrated my birthday at 7-Eleven, 53 years old. I just bought a cupcake in a plastic box, chocolate with icing and inscription. Happy birthday, the cashier, the girl with purple nails, asked. Is it someone's birthday? I said, yes, I have. She just smiled. Well, happy birthday, though. That's my whole party. I ate the cupcake at home. I blew out an imaginary candle and made a wish. Well, actually, I didn't wish for anything. I just blew it out. A couple of weeks later, I went to the gym. No real reason. I was just walking past Planet Fitness. Purple and yellow sign. I went in to take a look. A girl at the front desk was filling out a form. In the workout goal section, I wrote, I don't even know. She didn't even bat an eye. First day. I stood in front of the machine and looked at it like it was an airplane cockpit. Levers, cables, cushions. Next to me, a big guy with headphones was doing something wild with dumbbells. I decided to start with the treadmill. Turned it on and just started walking. After 15 minutes, I was already out of breath. After 20, I gave up and sat down on a bench. Marcus came over on his own. 25, wiry, with a tattoo on his neck, a trainer, but not on shift, just working out nearby. First time, man? Is it really that obvious? Well, you were sitting backwards on the leg machine. So yeah, dude, it is. He showed me the basics himself. Bench press, deadlift, squats. Calmly, no showing off, no attitude at all. I asked, how much do I owe you? He waved it off. Forget it. Just come back tomorrow, same place. I came back the day after tomorrow, too. 3 times a week, then 4. My body was changing slowly but surely. And then suddenly, I noticed shoulders in the mirror. Not like a bodybuilder's. No, not strong at all. But they were there. Before, I'd never really noticed that I even had shoulders. And then the laundry thing happened. Every Thursday, I hauled my dirty laundry to the laundromat on the corner. 6 washing machines, 4 dryers, a vending machine. With instant coffee that dispensed something murky and brown, definitely resembling something else, but not coffee. There was a bulletin board on the wall. Usually it had ads like couch for sale or looking for roommates. Lost cat, Mr. Pumpkin. That Thursday, there was a new notice. A white sheet, printed crookedly. Woodworking classes. Evening classes, Tuesday and Thursday. Oak Cliff area. Beginners welcome. Tools provided. Call Walker. The number was at the bottom, cut into little strips. I tore off one of the strips and put it in my pocket. Oh, that's old school, right? When was the last time you saw a notice like that? I haven't seen one in ages. It sat there for 2 weeks. Every time I put on my jeans, my fingers would bump into it. I'd take it out, look at it, and put it back. Something was holding me back. Something I couldn't explain. That thing that had lived inside me for 30 years. Don't stand out. Don't try anything new. Don't take risks. On the 15th day, I called Walter. Walter Crosby looked like he was part of his own workshop. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Remember that phrase? Just another thing made of wood. 68 years old. Gray hair like a hedgehog. His hands were broad, dark, and calloused. He'd been a carpenter for 40 years. Roofs, porches, houses. All over Texas. His knee gave out, so he moved from the roof to the garage. And then he started teaching. He became a teacher. He held his classes in his garage, a huge 2-car space converted into a workshop. A maple workbench that looked like it had been around since Kennedy was president. A wall lined with tools, planes, chisels, saws, each one hanging on its own hook. Each one labeled with painter's tape. There were 8 of us. Gary and Don were retirees, former truck drivers, both over 60, both loud as thunder. Tyler, a student, tall, quiet, wore glasses. Patricia, 59, a year after her stroke. Her left hand only worked half the time. The doctor told her to do something with her hands. She chose wood. Then there were Bill and Steve. Both about my age. Both recently divorced. We never talked about it, but we understood each other right away. Divorce? and leaves something in your eyes, in the way you sit. A habit of taking up less space than you're entitled to. The first class, Walter set a pine board in front of us. Touch it. We all touched it. It's just an ordinary board. Why bother touching it? Now close your eyes and touch it again. I closed my eyes. My fingers moved across the surface. The grain was long and fine. The knot was dense and smooth. The edge was rough, unfinished. Wood speaks, Walter said. Remember this with your hands. The first project is a stool. 4 legs and just a seat. Nothing complicated, I thought. Yeah, sure. My first stool turned out crooked. One leg was shorter than the other, and the whole thing wobbled. Walter looked at it and scratched his chin. It's crooked. It's not the stool that's crooked, it's the measurement that's off. Wood doesn't lie. If it's crooked, it means you made a mistake. I took the stool home and put it in the corner. It wobbled, but it stood. The first thing I made myself, with my own hands, without a blueprint, without anyone else's approval. Crooked, awkward, but mine. The second one turned out better. Walter nodded. That was the highest praise he ever gave. The third one was even better. I started to get a feel for the wood. When the saw moved just right, when the planer shaved off the perfect thickness, my hands were learning faster than my head. After a month, Walter called me over after class. Everyone else had already left. Tom, you've got the hands of an accountant. Is that a bad thing? It means you're precise. You measure twice, you don't rush. That's half the graph. The other half I can't give you. You either have it or you don't. But it looks like you do. I didn't get it then. I understood a little later. When I made my first coffee table. From scraps of oak left over after Gary's project. The top, 4 boards fitted so tightly you couldn't even see the seams. Simple legs, just slightly angled. I finished it with linseed oil, just like Walter taught me. The wood darkened and the growth rings stood out clearly. It was like someone had drawn them by hand. I put the table in my apartment, right next to the crooked stool. Sat down on the mattress and looked at it. The yellow wallpaper was still there, but somehow things felt a little easier. I hadn't seen Dane since that night. I found out what was going on in her life through Megan. In bits and pieces, in passing. Megan tried to stay neutral, but her voice always gave her away. She was angry at her mother. She didn't yell. It's just that every time the conversation turned to Dane, she spoke evenly. Too evenly. With that kind of voice people use when they're boiling inside, but on the outside you can't see a single crack. I never did meet Rick. Everything I knew was from Megan and from Facebook. Yeah, I checked it. I'm not proud of it, but who wouldn't check? Dane kept posting photo after photo. Rick and Dane at a restaurant on the waterfront in Galveston, at a bar in Deep Ellum. Her in some new dress, him in a Hawaiian shirt with parrots on it. Rick was 48, he sold used boats. A small lot on the outskirts of Arlington. Boats on trailers, a rusty sign. Tan, white tooth with thick hair. The kind of guy who looks older at 20, but at 48 still looks great. Well, unless you look too closely, of course. Dane would caption the photos. I'm finally living. My best years are still ahead of me. I'm living my best life right now. Emojis, hearts, champagne glasses. Megan never liked any of them. Not once. After 2 months, I deleted the app and put my phone face down. I'd had enough. But Megan kept talking about it. Just in passing, offhandedly. Mom went to Galveston with Rick again. I just nodded along. With her money. And then there's usually a pause. A sigh, a breath, and then a new topic. Rick was spending Diane's money. At first, just little things. Dinner, gas, a forgotten wallet, a jammed card, then bigger stuff. Diane paid for repairs on one of Rick's boats. Because we live together, we have a shared budget. Because he'd pay it all back later. Because Rick smiled and wanted to believe it. And you wanted to believe it too. This went on for 8 months. Megan told me about it later. One evening, Diane sat down. She sat at the computer and opened her bank statement. She hadn't looked at it in months. Why would she, when life was finally fun? At last, a fun life had arrived. The numbers were so shocking that at first she thought it was some kind of bank error. She added everything up, then checked it again. $21,000 over 8 months. Restaurants, trips, repairs on his boats. Some mysterious purchase on Amazon for over $1,000. She called Rick. The conversation was brief. I don't know what was said, but that evening, Rick, he came, packed his things, and left. The Hawaiian shirts disappeared from the closet. His toothbrush and cup were gone too. The key was out of a lock. It was as if he'd never been there at all. Diane posted their last photo together a couple of days before that. Some kind of festival. They're both smiling. He's wearing a cowboy hat. The caption, "My person." After that, silence. 3 weeks. Not a single post. Then a photo of a sunset. No caption, just a sunset. I saw this by accident. Marcus was showing me something on his phone and I caught it out of the corner of my eye. Sunset over Dallas. Beautiful. I looked and looked away. I turned 54 on Thursday. I remembered because I finished Walter's course that same day. Last lesson, we were standing in his garage. All 8 students. And Walter handed each of us a piece of wood. Scraps. Some got cedar, some got ash. I got walnut, dark and heavy, with a scent that made me a little lightheaded. Do whatever you want, Walter said. A stool, a spoon, a whistle. The last lesson. To make something without an assignment. I made a jewelry box. The lid was on wooden hinges. I lined the bottom with a piece of flannel from an old shirt. Walter turned it over in his hands, opened it, closed it, and nodded. That nod was probably worth all the compliments I've received in my 54 years. After the course, my hands didn't know what to do with themselves. They had gotten used to wood, its weight, its resistance, the way the chisel moves along the grain, and how it catches when you go across the grain. Without that, my evenings dragged on. I'd come home from work and have dinner. By that time, I was already cooking a little myself. Thanks to YouTube. I would just sit there. Yellow wallpaper, a crooked stool, a little table, a jewelry box. The walls stared at me and I stared back at them. I found a workbench on Craigslist. It was foldable. It fit right in the corner between the kitchen and the window. I got a vise at a garage sale. I collected tools one by one. A hand plane, chisels, a handsaw, a sander. Every purchase was a small step forward. My first order came out of nowhere. It was my downstairs neighbor, Derek, a programmer. He worked from home. He saw me hauling boards into my apartment and stopped by to check it out. He stood there, looked around, touched the table. Did you make this? Yeah. Listen, I need a bookshelf. Like this. And he showed me with his hands. Can you make it for me? I said, $150. Don't overthink it. I just blurted out the first number that came to mind. Derek nodded, and I spent 3 days working on it. I picked pine, light, culm wood. I finished it with Luton oil. When Derek came to pick it up, he stopped in the doorway and ran his hand over the wood, slowly from top to bottom. He paid in cash and didn't say a word. A week later, a woman called. Derek had given her my number. She needed a dresser. Then another call. A coffee table. Then a dining table. Word of mouth. Someone told someone else. Then they told someone else. The phone. It rang a third time, then a fifth. I worked in the evenings. I'd come home from the office, change clothes, and work with wood until late at night. Shavings on the floor, sawdust in my hair, packed in my ears. My hands got rough, calloused, hard, and yellow. I stopped wearing gloves. You can't feel the material in them. And I needed to feel it. One day, Marcus asked me what I did in the evenings. I showed him some photos. A table, a dresser, a shelving unit. He just whistled in amazement. Tom, you need to post this stuff. But where? On Instagram, I'm serious. He said I needed to download the app. So I downloaded it, created an account, and he showed me how to take pictures. Light from the side, clean background. Capture the process, not just the finished product. The first photo. An unfinished ash dresser on the workbench with a chisel and a mug of coffee nearby. In a week, I got about 20 likes. I was 54, and 6 months ago, I didn't even know what a like was. Orders kept coming in. I started staying up until midnight, then until 1 in the morning. The workbench couldn't fit everything I needed anymore. Boards were stacked in the hallway. Glue was drying on the windowsill. The varnish smelled so strong that neighbors from the 3rd floor came by and politely asked me to open a window. I was out of breath, but in a good way. For the first time in 2 years, I actually thought about something. About the future. I needed more space. A lot more. I made the decision to quit my job in the bathroom. Yeah, it doesn't sound very heroic at all. Lunch break. A stall. Phone in hand. Open the calculator. Salary after taxes. Less than. We have been receiving furniture orders for the last 4 months. The difference was small, but it was in favor of wood. I've been sitting in the restroom of the office where I worked for 11 years, for 55 years. And I look at the numbers. The accountant is counting. The numbers don't lie. Gave 2 weeks' notice. Boss Larry, bald with walrus mustache. Good guy. Looked at me over his glasses. Tom, are you serious? Serious? Furniture? Furniture. He was silent for a moment, then reached out his hand. If things go south, give me a call. I'll always have a spot for you. I shook his hand and thought to myself that I wouldn't call. Not out of pride, but something else. Maybe stubbornness, or that feeling you get when you jump off a high dive and instead of panic, a strange clarity sets in. I found a garage in South Dallas in an industrial area by the railroad tracks. Concrete floor, center block walls, a gate that screeches horribly. The previous tenant used to fix motorcycles here. The smell of oil was so deep into the concrete. Like permanently. First day. I'm standing in the middle of an empty room. The fluorescent lights are buzzing. One of them's even flickering. In the corner. There's an oil stain. On the other side of the wall, the clatter of wheels on rails. A freight train. A long one. Never ending. Marcus came to help. We unloaded the pickup. By that time, I had bought a used Ford F-150. With a dent in the rear fender. Tools, a workbench, some boards. Marcus held the level while I put up the shelves. By evening, the wall was covered. Planes, chisel saws. Each in its place. Just like Walter's. I called him that evening. Walter, I opened a workshop. About time, man. What kind of place? A garage. It smells like motorcycles. In a month, it'll smell like wood. And I'll definitely come by to check it out. He showed up 2 days later. He walked around, touched the walls, knocked on the workbench, opened the vise, closed it, nodded. The first big order came in 3 weeks. A walnut dining table for a restaurant? Yeah, in Bishop Arts. The owner, Nancy, slender with silver rings on every finger. She walked in without calling. She saw her Instagram and found the address. I need a table that makes you want to stay, not leave after dessert, but stay. I worked on it for 2 weeks. Walnut is finicky. It doesn't tolerate people in a hurry. The tabletop is a solid slab with a live edge, sealed with epoxy. The legs, big solid legs, are trapezoidal with a crossbeam. When Nancy saw the finished table, she sat down at it, put her hands on the top, and sat there silently for 2, maybe 3 minutes. I didn't count on it. Then she said, "Yes, this is it. This is exactly what I need." I needed people. I just couldn't do it alone anymore. Eddie was the first to come. He's 41 years old, a former auto mechanic. The service shop closed down and his hands were freed up. Rough hands, used to metal, but they adapted to wood quickly. He was a quiet man. He smoked on the porch twice a day. Briefly, businesslike. Jorge showed up a month later. He's 36, from Guatemala. He worked on construction sites and warehouses and other places too. He had a long work history, but his hands were truly golden, no joke. He could make a mortise and tenon joint faster than I could even mark it out. He spoke English with an accent, but he understood wood without any translation. The waiting list kept growing. A month, 2, 3. I hung up a whiteboard and started writing down the orders. By the end of the year, there was no free space left on it. 55. I was 55. My hands were covered in calluses. My back was aching. Every evening, I'd find sawdust in the most unexpected places. I'd fall asleep at 10, wake up at 5. Without an alarm clock. The yellow wallpaper at home was still yellow, but I was hardly ever home. I learned about Diane's life after Rick only in bits and pieces. Always through Megan, always through my daughter, sometimes through mutual friends who would call just to, ask how I was doing, but really just to pass along the latest news. I'd listen, not interrupt, hang up, and go back to the tree, to my favorite pastime. Kevin showed up 4 months after Rick. 51 years old, 2 divorces behind him. That's definitely something to think about. But Diane decided not to think about it. Kevin sold insurance, wore a paisley tie, and laughed so loudly the whole room would turn to look. Cheerful, Diane apparently decided. He lasted 5 months. Megan said that after some argument, he just stopped answering her calls. He didn't block her, he just wouldn't pick up the phone. That's even worse. It's like a door that's not locked, but no matter how much you push, it just won't open. Then there was Neil. He was 56. Gray at the temples, blazer, glasses. He looked respectable. Turned out he was married. Wife in Houston, 2 teenagers. Diane found out 2 months later, by chance, on his unclosed Facebook page. Photos with family. Christmas. Red sweater on the wife. Diane called Megan. Megan called me. The daughter's voice sounded as if she was dragging something heavy and wanted to throw it, but there was nowhere to throw it. After Neil, Diane decided to reboot. Those are her words. Cancun, Las Vegas, the Caribbean cruise. Photos started popping up on Facebook again. Diane on the beach with a cocktail on the deck. There were fewer likes and even fewer comments. Credit cards kept multiplying. One day, Megan showed up at her mother's without warning and saw a stack of envelopes on the kitchen table. Bills, reminders, red stamps. "Mom, what is this?" Nothing serious. I'll take care of it." "Mom, it's a whole stack." I said, "I'll take care of it." The house, the same house with the lawn, Diane sold about 2.5 years after I left. The money was supposed to pay off the debts, but it didn't. Half went to credit cards, the rest, who knows where. Diane moved into a smaller apartment, then an even smaller one, and then to a worse neighborhood. Dylan stopped calling his mother altogether. Megan asked him about it. He answered briefly, I can't listen to it anymore, Meg. It's always the same thing. I'm just tired. Megan kept calling once a week, then less often. The conversations got shorter and heavier. Diane complained about Rick, about Kevin, about Neil, about the banks, about the neighbors. Not once did she complain about herself. Not once. I listened to these reports and stayed silent. One day, Megan asked, Dad, you're not gloating over all this, are you? I thought about it, really thought. No, but I don't feel sorry either, just nothing at all. That was the truth. No revenge, no satisfaction. Where Diane used to be, there's just empty ground now. Everything's healed over. Marcus spent 6 months trying to convince me, Tom, the craft fair in Fort Worth, April, outdoors, tons of people. You need to be there. I brushed him off. A fair means a booth. It means talking to strangers. It means I'm standing behind a table pretending I'm comfortable. For over 50 years, I've avoided situations where I have to stand there and pretend. Tom, Marcus said, you make furniture that people absolutely love, but nobody knows about it because you're holed up in your garage like a groundhog in its burrow. A groundhog it is then. Fine, I applied. Eddie and Jorge helped me load up the pickup truck with the ash rocking chair. My best piece. I worked on it for a month. And a coffee table with maple and walnut inlay. A geometric pattern assembled by hand. The fair's in the morning. April mornings in Texas are bearable, but by noon you regret everything. What you brought, what you're wearing. Tents, tables, signs. Next to me, there are women, a woman selling candles, and a guy with leather goods, and a guy with leather belts. I set up the furniture, hung up the sign, stood behind the table, hands in my pockets, then from my pockets to my chest, down along my body. There was nowhere to put them. People would come up, touch the wood, and ask, did you make this yourself? Yes. And what kind of wood is this? Ash. This one's walnut. Not much. By lunchtime, I sold a table to a couple from Dallas. He's an architect. She did something in fashion. Both of them were wearing white sneakers. Wendy came by after lunch. I didn't notice her right away. She was standing by the rocking chair, rocking it. She touched the backrest and the chair started moving back and forth, slowly and smoothly. Short hair, dark with streaks of silver, tanned hands, a thin copper bracelet, tarnished with age, jeans, a linen shirt, sleeves rolled up. Ash? She asked, looking up.
Yes.
Hand sanded? Yes. You can tell. A machine leaves circular marks, but here they're along the grain. It's beautiful. I looked at her. She knew what she was talking about. Do you work with wood? No, with fabrics. I have a shop in Fort Worth. Pillows, bedspreads, curtains, but I love any kind of material. If I can touch it, I'm interested. She smiled, not for show, just a quick little smile at the corner of her mouth, like it slipped out on its own. We talked, I don't know, for how long? A long time. About wood and fabrics, about how ash smells different from walnut, and how linen feels different from cotton. About customers who don't know what they want, but are sure about what they don't want. I forgot about everyone else. Eddie, who had come to help, was standing off to the side, intently studying the neighbor's candles. Linda was 54. Divorced 8 years ago. Her husband left her for a coworker. She didn't share the details, and I didn't ask. She ran the shop by herself, a small place on a side street, with a bell on the door and a cat on the counter. I wrote her number down on a scrap of sandpaper. There was nothing else handy. She laughed out loud, throwing her head back. That's the first time someone's given me a number on sandpaper. That's an unconventional approach. Our first date was 5 days later. Little Mexican restaurant on the outskirts of Fort Worth. A woman behind the counter was slapping tortillas together right in front of us. Dough on the griddle, and a minute later, a thin, spotted circle on the plate. We ordered fajitas and sat there for a couple of hours. No fireworks, no butterflies in the chest, no butterflies at all. Just two people who stopped pretending. She didn't need to have fun. I didn't need to prove I wasn't boring. We just ate and talked. When I drove her home, she stood at the door and said, "Tom, I'm not looking for adventure." "Yeah, me neither," I replied. "All right, see you Saturday then." We weren't in any rush at all. Linda was in Fort Worth and I was in Dallas. Half an hour on the highway with no traffic, an hour during rush hour. For the first 2 months, we only saw each other on weekends. Saturday, dinner, sometimes a movie, sometimes just walking down the street. Linda didn't ask about Diane, and I didn't ask her about her ex. No agreement, that's just how it happened, that's how it turned out. The past stayed outside the door. We talked about what was happening now, about the present. About the tree, about fabrics, about her cat, a cheeky orange guy named Biscuit who immediately claimed my lap as his territory, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. About the workshop, about orders, about how Jorge mastered the dovetail joint, and now does it better than I do. You know what a dovetail joint is, right? I hope so. It's a way of joining two boards together. Pretty cool thing. 3 months later, Linda came to the workshop for the first time. It was Tuesday morning. I was planing an elm countertop, a long one for a bar. She walked in with 2 cups of coffee, set one on the workbench, took off her jacket, sat down on a stool, and started watching. Eddie glanced at her, then at me. I shrugged. Jorge came over, introduced himself, and shook her hand. Linda said something to him in Spanish. Jorge laughed. For the first time in 6 months, I heard him laugh. Damn it. He replied at length, and all I caught was, "Bueno, bueno." From then on, they spoke Spanish every time Linda came by. I stood nearby and didn't understand a word, but damn, I liked the way it sounded. Linda started coming once a week, then twice. Coffee, conversations with Jorge, sometimes helping out with little things. She had an eye for color. She noticed shades I missed. "Tom, this varnish is too yellow for walnut. Try Danish oil with gray pigment." I tried it. She was right. I helped with repairs at her shop. I made a display case out of old boards that Eddie brought over from a house demolition in Oak Cliff. I cleaned them up, sanded them, and finished them with wax. The display case turned out warm, rough, with its own kind of history in every mark. Linda arranged some pillows made of unbleached linen on it. Biscuit, her cat, approved immediately. He jumped up and fell asleep between the pillows. And then Linda baked a pie. October, Sunday. I came over for lunch, opened the door, and the smell hit me. Cinnamon, apples, and something else warm. Linda was standing in the kitchen, wearing an apron dusted with flour. Grandma's recipe from Oklahoma. Grandma Ruth used to bake it every October when the apples were ripe. The pie was in an old cast iron pan, heavy with a chipped edge. The crust was golden, cracked. I took a bite and froze. I don't know how to describe it. Warmth. Just warmth. Not in terms of temperature, but in the sense that everything felt right. So right that the last 4 years just faded away somewhere, far off, and stopped mattering. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. A year and a half after the fair, I bought a plot of land. A small house on the outskirts of Fort Worth, 1 story, with a flat roof, and a yard where a lone pecan tree grew. The house was a wreck, almost falling apart. The previous owner apparently considered repairs a personal insult. The roof leaked, the windows wouldn't close, and the porch was practically rotted through. I called Eddie and Jorge. They came over on Saturday. Marcus showed up a little later, but he came too. We tore down the porch in a day. The rotten boards went in the truck bed and we tossed out the nails. I built the new porch out of cedar, wide with railings and 2 steps. The kind you can sit on and drink coffee in the evening. In Fort Worth, the sunsets are slow, thick, and orange. Here, the sun isn't in a hurry to leave. Linda brought her things in May. Biscuit sniffed every corner, every leg of every chair, and all the chairs were mine, handmade, and then sprawled out on the porch in the sun, stretched out to his full length. Megan came to the housewarming by herself. She had just broken up with someone, but didn't want to talk about it. We stood on the cedar porch, warm and smelling of resin. Linda was inside, unpacking boxes. Megan hugged me tightly and silently. Then she pulled away and said quietly, "It was about time, Dad. Long overdue." And she went inside to help Linda. Megan called on Wednesday evening. I was sitting in the workshop, oiling a cherry wood chair. The oil was going on smoothly, and I didn't want to get distracted by anything else. But Megan hardly ever called on weekdays. If she did, it meant something. "Dad, I was at Mom's." And then a pause. I put down the brush and wiped my hands with a rag. And? Bad, Dad. Really bad. Diane lived in a studio apartment on the eastern edge of Dallas. Even farther out than my first 1-bedroom, past the railroad tracks in some complex. No sunrise, no gardens, no 3 stories, thin walls, a parking lot with grass and cracks in the asphalt. Megan would tell me about it. I listened. 1 room, a kitchenette, a combined bathroom, and furniture like the kind people leave on the curb with a sign that says "free to take." A sagging couch, a table with 1 broken leg, and a dried up plant on the windowsill. The soil was cracked, pulled away from the sides of the pot. Diane worked as the cashier at the Kroger on Buckner Boulevard, 8 hours behind the conveyor belt. Milk, bread, chicken, diapers, beer. Diane, who was 30, had never worked a day in her life, who picked out curtains and planned vacations, who stood in the kitchen and, naked, told the man who paid for those curtains, "Get out. He paid for her life." I'm talking about myself here. "She looks older, Dad," Megan said. "A lot older." I stayed silent. Her hands, from the scanners, from the conveyor belts, they're red. She hides them when she notices me looking. She has credit card debt. Megan didn't know the exact amount, but she'd overheard bits and pieces. A lot. Diane was making the minimum payment. The interest was eating up half of it. Simple math. Any accountant could explain it in 30 seconds. But she didn't have an accountant around. All her friends had disappeared. Not all at once, but gradually. Karen, her best friend, they'd been close for almost 20 years, stopped answering her calls after Diane borrowed money and didn't pay it back. Shelley dropped out after her birthday, which Diane turned into a complaint session, then someone else, and then another, one by one. Diane's phone was silent. No buzzing in the evenings, no beeping. Megan called once a month. The conversations were strained, heavy. Diane held it together. "I'm fine, honey, don't worry," she'd say. But her voice didn't match her words, as if she was saying one thing but meant something completely different. And both of them, they both understood this perfectly well, but neither dared to say it out loud. Dylan called his mother once every 2 months, out of politeness, briefly. He told Megan, "Meg, I talk to Mom, and every time I hear the same thing. She blames everyone. Rick, Kevin, Neil, the banks, work, everyone but herself. I'm just out of words." In the evening, Diane would flip through old photographs. That was Megan's heel. She came in one day without warning. I opened the door with my key and saw my mother on the sofa in the dark. The phone screen illuminates the face from below. I scroll through them slowly, photo by photo. Christmas. I'm frying turkey in an apron. Apron with spots, white. Megan's gift. She was about 11 years old then. In the photo, I'm smiling, just barely. Megan's birthday. I'm blowing up balloons, my cheeks puffed out, eyes wide. Megan is laughing. I'm 43 in the photo. My hair's still dark. Picnic without a like. Dylan is about 12. He's throwing stones into the wire. I'm dragging a folding table from the car. Huge, metal, awkward. I hated carrying it, but I did it anyway. Megan stood in the doorway watching. Dylan didn't turn around. The screen glowed, the photos flipped by quietly. I know a thing or two about silence. I lived in it for 2 whole years with yellow wallpaper and microwave pasta, but my silence turned out to be temporary. Kind of like winter. Cold, dark, but eventually it lets go. Dylan's silence was different. She built it around herself. Decision after decision, choice after choice. She cut one person out of her life, brought in another, then a third, and then lost them all. She spent her money, lost all her girlfriends, and now she was sitting alone in that silence, scrolling through photos of the person she used to call boring. I hung up the phone, went back to the cherrywood chair, and picked up my brush. 7 years. 7 years later, I was sitting on the porch. An accountant's habit is to count everything. I never lost that habit. 7 years since that night in the kitchen. During that time, I slept on a mattress on the floor, ate microwave pasta, and almost started drinking. I started going to the gym, found a slip of paper in the laundromat, called Walter, and made a crooked stool. Then I made a straight one, then a little table. I quit my job, rented a garage, hired people, went to a fair, wrote down a number on sandpaper, ate fajitas, smelled cinnamon, and bought a house. If you list it all out like that, it sounds like a kick-ass list. And life was chaotic, inconsistent, with ups and downs, with stops and starts, sometimes a high, sometimes a low. But here I am, 59 years old. A cedar porch that I built myself. Even in April, a slow orange Texas sunset. The pecan tree in the yard is turned green. Last week, the first leaves appeared, sticky, light green. Biscuit, my favorite cat, is lying on the bottom step, squinting in the sun, orange, spoiled, and unfortunately getting old. There are 4 of us in the workshop. Eddie, Jorge, plus Jason. He's 29 years old. He came as an intern and stayed. And Martin, a former shop teacher who got tired of the school administration and wanted to make real things. Orders are booked 6 months in advance. The whiteboard hasn't been able to fit everything I want for a long, long time. So I started a spreadsheet on my computer. Marcus taught me how. By the way, Marcus is 32. He's not a coach anymore. He opened his own gym, a CrossFit place up in North Dallas. We don't see each other as often, but every time he shakes my hand and says, "Tom, you're my best project," I reply, "Marcus, you showed me how not to sit backwards on the exercise machine. Don't exaggerate, man." And he laughed. Walter came by in January. 75. His knee finally gave out on him. He walks with a cane now. He carved it himself out of wood. The handle is shaped like a bear paw. He walked around the workshop, touched the countertop Jorge was finishing up, knocked on the wood, and looked at me. "Tom, do you remember the first stool?" "Of course, the crooked one." "Do you still have it?" "It's in the corner." Eddie puts his cap on it. He smirked, walked toward the exit, tapping his cane on the concrete. Dylan flew in for the weekend for the first time in 3 years from Seattle with his girlfriend Emily. She's quiet, has freckles, works at some environmental organization. Dylan looked more grown up. Not like before, when being an adult just meant living on your own. He looked truly grown up. He stood on the porch for a moment, looked at the yard, at the pecan tree. Nice house down. Thank you, son. Did you build it yourself? The porch, yeah, the roof, with Eddie, the rest here and there. He nodded, a short silent nod, just like Walter. Turns out that gets passed down. Megan was expecting a baby. Her first, a boy. She called and said, "Dad, you're going to be a grandpa." I was sitting in the workshop, holding the phone and looking at the wall with tools and thought, I need to make a bed out of ash, sand it so that there is not a single splinter. Linda was inside, preparing dinner. It smelled of cinnamon, Grandma's recipe, apple pie. She baked it every fall and sometimes in the spring. The phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out. The number was unfamiliar. No, wait. I've seen it somewhere before. Old. The one I deleted from my contacts a long time ago. But the number's stuck in my memory. Try forgetting a number you've dialed for 30 years. Dane. One message, short, no emojis, no exclamation marks. And here's the question. Listen, maybe we should try again? I read it, reread it, looked at the yard, at the tree, at the pecan, the grass, at the cat, at the steps. Linda's voice came from the house. She was saying something to Dylan. He answered. Emily was laughing. Dishes clink. The smell of cinnamon drifted through the open door and mixed with the evening air, warm and grassy. How smart. Not out of malice, not triumphantly. It was the kind of smirk you get when you find an old shirt in the closet. The one I used to wear every day, but now it doesn't even fit over my shoulders. Not because I got bigger, but because I became someone else. I put away my phone and stood up. The cedar floorboards creaked under my feet. Tom, dinner's ready, Linda called from the kitchen. I'm coming, honey. I walked into the house and closed the door gently, without slamming it. An old habit, if you remember. Only before, I closed it quietly because that's just how things were done. But now it's because that's what I want. There was an unread message left on my phone. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, I just didn't want to. It's just that the Tom she was talking to, my ex-wife, the guy in blue shirts who mowed the lawn and never made a single decision on his own, he's somewhere far back in the past, on a mattress in an apartment with yellow wallpaper. Maybe he's still there, sitting and eating over-salted pasta. I don't know. That's not me anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. But this guy, the one sitting at the ashwood table next to the woman who smells like cinnamon, across from the son he hasn't seen in ages, in the house he fixed up himself, this man, he's alive, and he's definitely not bored.
Well, that's the end of the story. For me, Tom is a great example of how you should never give up, no matter what kind of crap happens in your life. I don't remember who said those words, who mentioned that example. I think even Anthony Robbins once said that you have to be like a fishing float. No matter what kind of crap pulls you down to the bottom, you must always resurface. No matter the storms or the waves on the water, the float always pops back up. Don't give up and keep striving for a better life, because we all deserve a better life. You deserve a better life, my friend. So what do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video, and I'll be sure to read them. I read almost every single comment. Longtime subscribers already know that. So, my dear viewer, subscribe if you're new here, and give this video a like. And now I'll say goodbye. Until the next video, bye-bye.